Thank you, everyone. This is Eric Seleznow from Jobs for JFF, calling in from Houston, Texas. We're on an event with a bunch of our friends in the community college business. We have Emma in Washington, D.C., Emma Fisher's in Washington, D.C., and Rachel Crowfoot's in our Boston office, and we hope to organize a eventful webinar for you today on veterans and apprenticeship. So thank you very much for joining. Before we get started, we want to honor Veterans Day, which is November 11th, celebrated as a federal holiday on November 12th. So we want to honor all our veterans for their service. We also want to use this occasion to kick off National Apprenticeship Week, which is next week, November 12th through, the 16th or 18th. So next week is National Apprenticeship Week. So this is one of our pre-events to National Apprenticeship Week, and we want to thank the Department of Labor for all their work around the country and all of you individually who have gotten involved in a National Apprenticeship Week. So this webinar will highlight some exemplary apprenticeship programs and policies that help veterans. With the ongoing expansion of apprenticeship across the country, and believe me, folks, this country is in the middle of a transformation on apprenticeship and other forms of work-based learning. And we are excited to help expand the knowledge of veterans' apprenticeship programs, honor those who participate in them, the employers who provide opportunities, and try to share some of that information for everyone. The webinar will provide some important information about this and also important information about the range of GI Bill benefits that veterans are eligible to receive. I didn't know much about that until about 3 or 4 years ago, and then there's some great benefits to that. So next slide, please. So today I'm going to be joined, that's me, I'm Eric, I'm in Dallas. They cut off my head, but I'm sorry, I'm in Houston, not Dallas. They cut off my head, but I'm here with you today. Next slide, Rachel. And we're going to do a brief introduction, and then we're going to talk to our GUS panelists today. And I want to say that we're joined by a great panel. I'm really excited to have. I'm going to start off with Mark Toal from the United States Department of Labor Veterans Employment Training Service. And then after we get done with Mark, we're going to have a panel with Dave Harrison from Fastport, Marilyn Surber from a private employer with Melton Trucking, and Melanie Stover from Northern Virginia Community College. And then during this, you'll be able to chat in or type in some of your questions for this, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. So next slide, please. So that's our agenda for today. We'll go to 4:15. If we get done early, we'll give you some time back. If not, we'll go right to 4:15. I should say this webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting the webinar online next week for Apprenticeship Week and beyond. And so if any of your team, your folks, your partners, or your staff want to log in, or if you find it exciting enough that they want to log in, we'd love to have some people hit on our website to bring this down, to draw this down next week. So JFF, many of you know us, but some of you don't. We're a large national nonprofit that's trying to repair and fix the labor market and work in the intersection of employment, education, and training. And we design a lot of innovative solutions across the country to scale programs that work in workforce development. We launched, next slide, please. There's a lot of exciting things. I'm going to recommend everybody go to the JFF website and see some interesting things we're doing with a work-based learning cohort, a wage challenge, some great resources. But we've also launched last year our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. And there's the link up there, center4apprenticeship.jff.org, where we have over 260 different resources from a lot of our friends and partners in states and locals on there for your perusal, and some other interesting articles and notifications. So our Center for Apprenticeship, that's where I work, and Emma works, and Rachel works, and we're pleased to bring this to you today. This is our fourth, I think, in a series of webinars that we've done this year, and again, we're focusing on veterans and honoring National Apprenticeship Week. So Emma's going to send you a note about sending in your questions, but why don't we get into the content before we go any further and get to our panel, because you don't want to listen to me drone on and on, but we do want to talk to our panel. So let me just lay down the foundation, right? So over the last 4 or 5 years in this country, there's been a major transformation. There's been huge federal investments, over $500 million in apprenticeship. There's all sorts of energy and activity during the previous presidential administration with Obama and then currently with President Trump, there's a continued interest in expanding and growing apprenticeship. We've done this 2 other times in our country, back during the Clinton administration and the other Bush administration, and it never held, but now there's some significant funding. Governors are interested, mayors are interested, local councils are interested, labor, private sector, business, community colleges, workforce boards. There's a lot more people getting into the apprenticeship lane. Again, apprenticeship is not the solution for everything, but the solution does offer an excellent solution for some folks. What I would also like to say, in this tightening labor market with low unemployment, it's really tough for employers to find workers. It's not tough for them to find a worker. It's tough for them to find an employee with the skills that they're looking for. So apprenticeship, highly structured, high-quality apprenticeship really offers an opportunity for employers to grow their own workforce and provides workers the opportunity to get paid, get training, move up, increase their wages, and another pathway to the middle class and beyond. So apprenticeship's a great solution. Like I said, not for everything, but it does help quite a bit. So let's just talk about veterans, and many of the opportunities and benefits veterans get. Sometimes their spouses are eligible as well. But there's, depending upon what data you look at, there's anywhere from 200 to 250,000 servicemen and women who transition out of the military each year. It's been interesting if you've been watching that the last 10 years, and with our engagement in some of these areas across the world, how that number has fluctuated. We'll ask Mark to talk a little bit about that. We've got a record low employment across the country, and also that translates with veterans as well. But I think some of the challenge with veterans, like a lot of folks, is they may have a job, but it may not be the job that they need. It may be underemployment, and apprenticeship is often used as a way to either get entry-level incumbent workers to move up in a company, if a company so chooses to do that, or a way for an underemployed person to find a new career and a new pathway forward. Veterans, transitioning service members, spouses have valuable skills. Also, they need industry-specific experience or credentials to do this. And our nation's veterans are a proven talent pool within the labor market, and we should be cognizant of that. And we just know that from the data, whether it's Department of Labor data or some of the other data, that apprenticeship has positive outcomes, one of which, not least of which, is job retention. And for employers, that's a real hook, because if in this labor market, people can hot jobs and provide all sorts of churn for employers. Apprenticeship, according to DOL data, has like 91% retention rates, and that's a pretty attractive thing for an employer. So next slide, please. So, apprenticeships and modern apprenticeships are different. We know they're not just labor unions and building trades and manufacturing, that a lot of folks are in it. Some of the best programs in the country have been operated by organized labor in the building trades, but we've taken a lesson I think this country has and tried to take that model into other industries and occupations. There's plenty of resources out there to access veterans. We'll talk about that. The federal government has made some resources to assist service members and veterans into high-skilled, good-paying jobs. There are vets who do participate in state-approved apprenticeship programs get some pretty darn good benefits. We'll talk a little bit about that. But to get them in an apprenticeship program, they first have to be in an approved program. So we're going to talk all about that momentarily. So I'm going to stop talking. I talk too much and probably too fast, so I want to leave room for everybody else. So I think we're just going to get into the conversation here. And I'm going to start with my friend Mark Toal from the United States Department of Labor. Mark is the Veterans Employment Manager at the Veterans Employment and Training Service at DOL, and this is an entire division that's devoted to Veterans Employment and Training Services. He's the Employment Training Manager, and Mark and his team across the country, the regional veterans coordinators, do employer outreach and make it easier to companies to access, hire, train, and retain veterans, transitioning service members. And there is a difference. Mark has educated me, and that's going to be my first question to him, and about how to leverage some of these resources to help them. But before we start, I want to thank Mark for his service. He's a retired Marine Corps infantry officer, 28 years of active duty, and ran transition assistance programs in the military. So Colonel, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Mark, are you there?
Yes, sir, I sure am. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you including me in your webinar today and being part of this great panel.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, Mark. Hey, before we get started, in some of our prep for this, you educated me a little bit about the veterans community and difference between veterans and transitioning service members and unemployment rates. So I'm wondering if you could sort of just take me back to 101 and give me a little update on background on who we're working with here in the veteran space.
Sure. Well, first of all, the transitioning service member is someone who is still serving on active duty. At their end of their service, when they get out or transition out of the different services, they enter a veteran status. Additionally, we have reservists and National Guard that do certain amounts of time either on the weekends or they go do longer drills, or in some cases they deploy for about a year, 6 months to a year. So that's a different population of our serving reservist and National Guard folks, but basically the active duty transitioning service member, again, still on active duty. Different numbers, you put 250 up here. Lately it's been about 200,000 a year that transition every year into the civilian sector.
Okay, great. So can we talk a little bit, I know I have a set of questions. I'm going to throw you a few curveballs
Sure.
here, Mark. So we have an unemployment rate of 2.9%.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for the veteran community? You hear lots of talk, veterans are in need of services, but unemployment rate is pretty good. Does that tell the whole story?
Well, right now we are at 2.9%, and really veterans have even during the 2010 when the unemployment rate was high across the country, the veterans have had lower unemployment rates, lower than their non-veteran peers. But we also understand about underemployment, and really for us, every veteran that does not have the job that has meaningful employment with family-sustaining wages, that's who we really want to work with. Right now, there's about little less than 10 million veterans in the workplace, 2.9%. So there's still about 300,000 unemployed veterans out there. And a veteran right now, the median age of a veteran is 64 years old. And when we look at our unemployed veterans, 55% of those of our unemployed veterans are over the age of 45. So they've been out of the service for quite a long time. So when we think about veterans and we think about veteran unemployment, I think it's worthy that we think of veterans of all ages. Additionally, Eric, for the first time since World War II, we have less than 6% of the workforce is made up of veterans. So it's a bit of an older population. There's fewer veterans than we've had in the last 70 years. But really, the veterans are doing really well in the workforce because they bring technical skills and soft skills such as reliability, leadership, and teamwork. But again, we're not going to rest until every veteran has good, family-sustaining, and meaningful employment. Excuse me. The other thing I just want to mention, Eric, is there's plenty of studies out there that indicate that it's a good business decision to hire a veteran. Additionally, there's studies that show how an apprenticeship program is also a good business decision with the return on investment. And what we found is when employers combine a veteran employment program with a apprenticeship program, it's a great business decision.
So any examples that you have of some recent sort of innovations or good, interesting programs that you can mention real quick, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have to say, I've been doing this at DOL Vets for about 4 years, and I've been, I guess, about 7 or 8 years now. I've been involved in veteran employment. So one of the things I've really noticed is the apprenticeships for veterans has really gone viral. There's some great opportunities. Not all veterans want to go back and utilize their GI Bill for school. So it offers them an opportunity to use some GI Bill benefits to get some training and instruction and get into meaningful employment. The other thing we've seen is, we used to always think about blue-collar apprenticeships, but we've got white collar and what we call new collar. So some examples would be, while we've got, Fujitsu has got an IT program, Aon Insurance Company's got a white collar insurance apprenticeship. BMW has got a technician program. Toyota just signed an apprenticeship with DOL last Friday. Service King, Rockwell Automation. So we're seeing apprenticeships expand, not only in the traditional blue collar, but in all industries and all sectors as well.
Right. I think there's been incredible work across the country, taking this model in other industries, in healthcare, IT, cyber, et cetera. So it's great to see that. So Mark, how do I, if I'm an employer or if I'm a community-based organization or a college or whatever, but let's talk from an employer's perspective, how do I access veterans if I want to work with transitioning service folks or vets? Where do I go? What do I do? What are some connections I can make?
Okay, the first connection is really to work with the state workforce. We served 121,000 veterans in our state workforce agencies, and those are at the Career One-Stops and American Job Centers. And those are veterans in the local community. So I would always, the first thing that we do from DOL Vets and when we talk to employers is, these are services that are prepaid by the American taxpayers, and there's business services teams. So please connect with the local state workforce agency and the American Job Centers or your workforce development board. Again, there's business services teams that are there to assist employers to post their jobs and to connect with veterans. Additionally, we have other resources we can help employers get connected with. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Hiring Our Heroes, provides transition summits and installations across the country and hiring fairs. We also have partnerships with Soldier for Life and Marine for Life and the National Guard Bureau, where employers can go ahead and leverage their Facebook sites and other social media to put out their opportunities to connect with not only transitioning service members, but also veterans and military spouses as well.
That's great. So if we can go to the next slide. So Mark, if I'm a veteran and I'm transitioning out and I go to one of these companies you mentioned, or I get in a high-quality registered apprenticeship program or an apprenticeship program, what do I have to do as a veteran to obtain these benefits? And I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit about those benefits before we move on to... Sure.
And I just want to mention DOL Office of Apprenticeship has a brand new website called apprenticeship.gov. If everyone could take a look at that, I can tell you there's going to be some significant improvements on this. They're looking to make this website and make it a place where it's going to be really easy to facilitate and to make it easy for employers to create apprenticeship programs. So the GI Bill is a fantastic benefit for veterans, post 9/11 veterans, when they get done with their active duty service to go back to school. And you can go to college, and while getting your tuition paid for, they would get also a housing stipend. This is called, a monthly housing stipend that's based on the zip code of their location. So, for example, in Manhattan, I just looked it up today, it's nearly $3,700 a month. In Central Illinois, it's $1,200 a month. But when the VA started looking at the utilization rates of the GI Bill, they noticed that a lot of veterans were not using their GI Bill, the benefits. So they expanded it to apprenticeship programs, which I believe has been a game changer. Because now a veteran who really, because he or she may have a spouse and a couple kids, can't go back to college full time, nor maybe they don't want to go back to a 4-year college university. This is an opportunity for them to get into an apprenticeship program. And when they're in the apprenticeship program, and that registered apprenticeship program with DOL and the state approving agency that administers it for the VA, that while they're going through the program, the Earn and Learn program, they can receive a housing stipend while they are going through that apprenticeship. So when they're getting apprenticeship wages, they've got that housing stipend that's really going to give them a living, a family-sustaining wage. So it's really opened up a lot of doors. On this slide at the bottom, there's a link, there's employer guides at this link. There's lots of information for employers to see how they can how veterans can utilize their GI Bill and how employers can get tied into these programs through the VA.
That's great. All right, and I think there's a next resource page on the slide.
Yep.
We can go to the next slide, please. And, you know, there's Mark that you generously provided your email. Don't bombard him, but his email's there, veterans.gov resources. I think the benefits page you showed before, there's an employer's guide. So, Mark, thanks very much. We need to move on in the interest of time.
Eric, real quick, if everybody emails me, that's really what I want out of this. Also, I got to put a pitch in. Hire Vets Medallion Vets Program. Go to hirevets.gov. My voice is gone because we recognized 239 employers today. And also, November 10th, Saturday, is the Marine Corps' 243rd birthday. Happy birthday, Marines.
Get that in. All right, Colonel, thank you very much. Stand by for questions. Appreciate your time today, Mark. And, gee, can you get a little more enthusiastic about your job? Thank you. Hey, we're going to move on to my friend David Harrison with Fastport. Dave's the Executive Director of National Apprenticeships, has extensive experience. I'm not going to read his bio, but you can get it from our website. He's got 20 years experience, more than that, supporting, developing, and working on apprenticeship models. There's his shining face. You can look at his bio later. Let's just move to the next slide. Dave, can you hear me? Welcome to our event today.
Hello, Eric, and thank you for having me join this wonderful event.
All right. Well, look, thanks for joining us. Happy Veterans Day. Happy National Apprenticeship Week. So tell us a little bit about Fastport, its mission. We know that you're a Department of Labor intermediary in the apprenticeship space. Tell us a little bit about Fastport and your role as an apprenticeship intermediary.
Well, Fastport itself has dual missions, initially and continually helping transitioning service members and veterans find meaningful employment with living and sustainable wages for long-term careers. We've been in that business for quite a while, and we've been very successful at it. We've touched, in one way or another, over 65,000 veterans or transitioning service members in conjunction with meaningful employment. At the same time, we have a dual mission that involves registered apprenticeship. As you said, we're one of the industry intermediaries that have a contract that are signed by the Department of Labor to expand apprenticeship. We initially started in the transportation sector, but we're working well outside of that now. And that not only we're affecting veterans, but I must say that we have helped transition over 6,000 people in 21 months into apprenticeship programs. 42% of those are diversity and inclusion population individuals, and 37% are veterans. And so our mission is to expand apprenticeship in the most productive way possible, largest scale possible for long-term meaningful employment.
So how are you doing that? How are you connecting employers with transitioning service members? How does that happen on the ground? We have a lot of people listening who probably wonder how that actually happens. How can they do it? How do you do it? How do you work with your employers?
And if you're not haven't been in this space, or even if you're trying to get into the space, it's literally like a sea of goodwill. People like Mark Toal are great navigators. We have strived to be as intermediary between the entire process, from the TAP to the transitioning military, individual bases, large-scale functionality for software programs that gather data for vet fast tracks, and then make that information available to veteran-ready employers who want to engage veterans. Then at the same time, we utilize the national standard apprenticeship model so they can utilize their GI Bill benefits, which is a fantastic recruiting and retention tool. And as I said, how we link this together is we use the DOL apprenticeship models that you have worked on and others that allow a national standard so employers can opt in and out easily. We do this at the same time in conjunction with Hiring Our Heroes, with several organizations like the George Bush Institute, Department of Defense, National Guard, national office, if us individuals, Army Reserve, those people, plus we network out to every single industry in the nation.
Okay. So, David, you mentioned, and we can go to the next slide, please. I'll get to that in a minute. But, Dave, I wanted to mention, you mentioned a very interesting term called employers who are vet ready. Can you share what you mean by being vet ready?
Well, those of us have been at this for a while, and when everybody started trying to work on the veteran unemployment issue and the fit the skills gap problem we have in this country, employers said, hey, we like vets, but that's really a vet-friendly ideal. Vet-ready is ready to take on a transitioning service member or do so in such a way that allows for a smooth transition and long-term employment, having mentoring programs, having veterans affinity groups, things like that. And it doesn't matter if it's a large corporation or a small company. All those things are doable. Engaging in employee support of the Guard and Reserve, all those things are vet ready. If you'll link employees that you have in your culture, in your company, who are veterans, with other transitioning service members, you'll find that your retention value on those folks, MHA or not, is going to be higher than even their counterparts in the civilian world universally, regardless of occupation. White collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter.
So it's a matter of getting employees prepared, that they're understanding how to work with vets or these transitioning members, and providing adequate support services on the job or external to the job, where we see
that's exactly correct. There's a lot of nuance to it. We don't have time, but that's exactly where you have to live to be vet ready.
All right. So can you share with us? So you've been in, Fastport has been in the transportation, logistics, and distribution space. Can you just, and we're going to be talking to one of your employers in a little while, Dave, but before, can you just tell us some of the employers you've connected with? Has it been all in TDL, or there are other things you're getting into, and what has the response from employers been?
Well, we of course, we started in the transportation segment, and we've got over 35 employers involved that are Fortune 500s down to mom and pops. Additionally, we've expanded scope and scale through aviation, maritime, as well as even outside of transportation. Now, I'm literally in Dallas at the Engineer Technicians Association's meeting, where they have an apprenticeship with an entry-level point, and they're focusing on veterans. Entry-level point is about the same as what a bachelor's degree would provide. And when they follow the career pathing, they'll be six-figure people in about 6 years.
Mm-hmm. And do you help employers develop curricular, develop standards, or go through the registration process? Do you partner with them? Do you help them? You hold their hand while they're doing it? Do you do it? How do you work with employers, or just guide employers through the registration process, or just connect them with people at DOL or in the States? How do you do that?
Yeah, specifically, we walk them through the process. Mm-hmm. I don't like hand them off. If they want to build a standard or an apprenticeship, we will build it from scratch. They want to join one that we designed as a national program standard or national guideline standard. We make it as easy as possible. We adapt their training process to existing work processes. I don't want to get too technical on that, but basically the way we approach this, and our mantra is simple and scalable and sustainable. And if it's not that, we make it that way, or we try to avoid doing it. The other thing that we focus on is not changing a business model so that it is sustainable and it will perpetuate itself. So we will walk an employer through the process, come up with multiple solutions, because apprenticeship isn't a one-trick pony, as you well know, Eric. When you were there, you were smart enough to build several apparatuses that can be used universally, because it needs to be modified to that employer. The other thing we do that's very effective, and I should mention this, is we work with industry associations. We target industry associations. We co-sponsor national standard apprenticeships for industry associations, so we can affect thousands of employers, thousands of candidates, and multiple occupations at the same time. And we're doing this inside transportation and HVAC and engineering, refrigeration, even cyber tech right now.
Yeah. Rachel, next slide, please. I believe there's a number of benefits to employers. I don't think we need to go through that. I think most people on the line would agree that apprenticeship provides benefits to both employers and employees. Next slide, please. I want to get to the tail end of these things. You talked about tax credits. In this particular slide, there are states. Can we just talk, I'm just following up on what Mark talked about very quickly, Dave. We don't need to go in this too deep, but, the GI Bill, have you and your employers seen that as a really good tool in this system? And then are these tax credits used in the states that you're working with?
Yeah, well, twofold. First off, the MHA. MHA is a tiebreaker in the recruiting and retention game. It absolutely is a boon to retention. You posted numbers of 91%. That's universal across the board. We have seen in some of the toughest markets for turnover there are in the country, 60% jumps in retention just due to MHA engagement alone with the veterans in that piece, as well as increased recruiting value. We're at a point where 2 years into this, Eric, I had employers calling me saying, I need to be part of apprenticeship because my recruiting team is telling me that people are going to other employers who have apprenticeships and I can't touch them. I'm losing out on the market share. Now, along with that, so the MHA is a wonderful tool for sustained long-term workforces that are very trainable.
MHA, Military Housing Allowance.
Military Housing Allowance. It's a wonderful tool, and the key to that is apprenticeship.
All right.
So if you're going to engage in the veteran population and you want to be veteran ready, become a registered apprenticeship provider so that you can provide that MHA benefit to your employees. The other thing we're looking at the slide for tax credits, there are tax credits for apprentices, there are tax credits for veterans, and those programs are available. And as you well know, that there are various programs that provide tax credits or tuition assistance for apprenticeships as well.
Yeah, plenty of resources. Mark outlined many of them. You just did. So my last question before we move on is I'm excited to hear from Marilyn Surber. But, Dave, what simple advice would you have for folks who are getting into this, who are either in this space or trying to get in this space or trying to work with employers to develop partnerships or trying to access veterans? What sort of a simple advice? Well, it's never simple, but what sort of advice do you have?
If your employer, get a hold of an intermediary of some kind. I will talk to anyone and get you to the right place. So because they can make your life so much easier than trying to figure it out on your own. The Officer Apprenticeship, they're great people, but they can build you a wonderful apprenticeship, but they don't have time to help you after that apprenticeship's in place. They just don't. It's not realistic. But intermediaries can and will. And if you are a education provider or you could be a stakeholder for related training instruction, partner with intermediaries. Think about becoming sponsors and partnering directly with employers, providing what that employer needs. It will serve you as far as your student population, and it will serve you in sustainment. Apprenticeship is the direct conduit that works with this model.
Yeah. That's great advice. And just to review, Mark talked about his veterans managers who work across the country trying to do this. Department of Labor has regional offices and state offices in half the states. State apprenticeship agencies also provide navigators and support services. One-stop system can refer and craft programs and connect. So there are plenty of resources out there. And then you've got some of these DOL-funded intermediaries like Fastport. JFF's also an intermediary in the manufacturing space, but certainly, there are people out there with veterans expertise who can help you, and I think Mark's referrals and Dave's are really helpful for that. All right, Dave, thanks. Can you stay on the phone a little bit more in case we get some questions?
Certainly.
And then I'd like to move to Marilyn Surber. Marilyn is with Melton. What is it? Melton Truck Lines, Human Resources, and oversees their apprenticeship and veterans work. Marilyn, welcome today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for making the time to come to that. We had a great conversation the other day, and I don't want to be too formal here. I just really want to hear what Melton Truck does, why they do it, and how they got into it. So tell us a little bit about your company, your workforce, and your recruiting needs.
Okay. Well, first of all, Melton Truck Lines is a nationwide flatbed company, so we haul products all through North America. We have over 1,600 employees in the U.S. And all over the country. We're corporate headquarters is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So most of our workforce are truck drivers, over-the-road truck drivers, and so that is our biggest recruiting need and where we use the apprenticeship model the most. So we have always tried to target veterans, and we've worked locally and regionally on skills gap projects, and so that's kind of what led us to the apprenticeship model. So the need to want to have the MHA available for our veterans, and then also, for trucking, we needed to compete with other trades that had more established apprenticeship models, and so that led us down that path. And then we were able to partner with Fastport to get the national standard apprenticeship program, and then that's kind of what became a game changer for us in that space.
Mm-hmm. And was your motivation just on labor market needs, or what brought Melton Truck to this point where you wanted to research and outreach and make those connections?
Well, trucking, for those of you guys that don't know, is a huge, highly in-demand field, and so it's really hard to find truck drivers, and truck driving also has a high turnover. So what led us to that was the need to fill our trucks, and then also to figure out what can we do to retain drivers more, and then also with the changing workforce and the younger workforce, we know that they want a career path and they want developed training maybe more than other generations, and so we saw that as a way to offer that something different in that space and really a career path for people in trucking.
All right. And did you run into, problems along the way? Did it take you a long time to do it? Did you find developing an apprenticeship program to be onerous and difficult, or was it a pretty reasonable process? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, we started with a state apprenticeship program, which was pretty onerous, but then when we partnered with Fastport, and they helped us, we adopted their national standard apprenticeship model. That was very simple. Getting into that program and submitting people through the program and tracking them through the program has been really easy for us. We just manage it as part of our onboarding process. People fill out the paperwork, and we really haven't had any problems at all with it.
All right. And wondering if you could give some advice to any other employers or program folks who are on the call today. What advice might you have for them to create an apprenticeship program? What things should they think about up front? What things should they think about once they bring someone on?
Okay. Yeah, I think that what Dave said is true. Partnering with an intermediary, if you can, is huge, especially when you're trying to learn all of the terminology. I'd say there's a specific terminology that is used in the apprenticeship model, and then even more so in the veteran space. And so intermediaries that can help you become veteran ready and help you develop some of those programs like the mentorship program and changing your job descriptions and doing all of those things so that you meet the needs of the population that you're looking for. And so I would say just don't be scared of it and take it one step at a time, and it takes a while to see the ROI. So you have to just be committed to trying things and doing it month after month, year after year, and then you really start to see the benefits of the apprenticeship and then also of the veteran hiring initiatives.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think for most companies, apprenticeship is probably going to be a cost to the first year. You bring somebody new on, you're training them, but by the second year, they're productive, you're getting a return on investment, they're learning, they're getting credentials, and their work is improving. So I'm wondering, Marilyn, if you could tell us a little bit about so now you've been operating this program for a while, you're getting good at it, Your company's committed to it. Obviously, you're having some good experiences. So how has job retention been? You mentioned an industry where there's a lot of turnover. Are people moving out? Are people moving up within the company? Are they staying with you longer than your non-apprenticeship drivers? Talk a little bit about that if you could.
Okay. So we've hired almost 1,300 apprentices since we started this program. And so and our turnover has improved in that area. So, but specifically with veterans. So our turnover with our veteran apprentices is about 30 to 40% lower than it is just with our general population. But even non-veteran apprentices, our turnover is better than when we had a model without the apprenticeship, especially because we also partner with associations within our industry, both private and public, to get students with the pre-apprenticeship training on that end as well. And so we really work together as an industry to make sure that people are getting the proper training from the very beginning of their journey in transportation.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you would have been able to figure this out if you didn't partner up with Fastport?
I think that eventually we would have, but I don't. I think it would have been a lot harder, and definitely partnering with Fastport has helped us get where we need to be. And also, make those connections. We attend Hiring Our Heroes events. We've done some stuff with Soldiers for Life and the U.S. Chamber and ESGR. And so, being partners with Fastport has helped us know what people we need, what organizations we need to be a part of, and where we need to be, and what events are important, and how to target that market that we're looking for.
So you have to do this work on purpose and intentionally, right? This is
absolutely. And about 30% of our workforce are veterans, and so we want to increase that as much as we can.
Wow, that's a significant number, and your bosses and your bosses' bosses are very happy with the way things are going?
They are. We're doing some stuff next week in honor of Veterans Day and also National Apprenticeship Week, and so yes, we're just hope to keep moving forward.
Wow, it's great to hear of a company that took the initiative, Marilyn, to get in and do that. They should be very proud of you. Thank you so much for this work and for joining us today, and hopefully you can hang on in case we get any questions. But one of the things Marilyn spoke about, if you go to the next slide, please, Rachel, but one of the things Marilyn spoke about is, getting out there, and a couple of questions have come in about, where can I find apprenticeship resources in my state or my area? And you've heard a couple today. And again, Mark said go to apprenticeship.gov. That's DOL's new website. That's supposed to have all things apprenticeship. You've got a couple of veterans links that were on the slides. And again, our slides, if you don't have them, will be posted publicly within a couple of days, so you can access from there. There are 5 or 6 national intermediaries who do this work, again, on the DOL website, JFF, Fastport, American Hotel and Lodging Association, Urban League, and several others, AFL-CIO. So there's plenty of folks who do this work. And another question we got earlier was somebody who was concerned that, apprenticeships never lead anywhere. And I will just tell you that the data doesn't confirm that. If they're doing high-quality registered apprenticeships or other high-quality apprenticeships that have rigor or standards, the outcomes are consistently good wages, good jobs, and good outcomes. So, perhaps you've been seeing some of the wrong types of apprenticeship programs out there. But there are plenty of resources out there. So we're going to move the conversation on to a little bit different focus, and I'm joined by Melanie Stover, and Melanie is a Director of Business Engagement at Northern Virginia Community College, often referred to as NOVA for Northern Virginia. It's a large community outside of Washington, D.C. She's the Director of Business Engagement and manages a bunch of labor market programs, including apprenticeship and corporate partnerships. So, Melanie, thanks for joining us today. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I've been following the work of Northern Virginia Community College for some time in this space, and you have a unique approach to apprenticeships and a unique approach to serving veterans in apprenticeships. So wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how this came about, a little bit about your community and local demographics, and how Northern Virginia as a community college really got in this game.
Absolutely. So a little bit about Northern Virginia Community College. We are about 80,000 students, both on the credit and non-credit sides of the house. And we have 6 campuses and 2 centers in Northern Virginia. And one of the things that is really interesting about the population that we serve is that about 15% of NOVA students are actually either military or veterans. So we have a very high veteran population that we serve at the college. Also, another little known fact about Northern Virginia is that we are quite the tech hub, being so close to the DC Metro. So we have a lot of job and employment opportunities and pathways into occupations in the information technology industry. So really big market for it here. And so in order to be responsive to industry needs with those demands and that data in mind, we were approached about a year and a half ago by Apprenticeship and Amazon Web Services, if you flip to the next slide, to support with bringing a very successful model from Seattle in cloud computing for an apprenticeship program. To bring that here to Northern Virginia. And we jumped on it and said yes, and we're so glad that we did. So what's really unique is that this program is non-traditional, and it's the first apprenticeship program that Northern Virginia Community College has offered. So the program's unique in that the 7 veterans, of which the photo is shared on the screen, we had, all of them are veterans. All of them had a degree in information technology and jumped into this starting at the end of July of 2017. And the program began with about 12 weeks here at the Northern Virginia Community College campus, where they spent Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 p.m. with us, learning a variety of technical skills that would prepare them to become associate cloud consultants. And this boot camp style led to 3 industry certifications that have been used as milestones and benchmarks to demonstrate progression throughout the duration of their apprenticeship program. And following the 12 weeks here at the college, they transitioned into on-the-job training at Amazon Web Services offices here in Herren, Virginia. So we stepped into the apprenticeship world with this program, and it was so successful that to date we've had over 150 apprentices going through a variety of cloud-related occupations at NOVA. And the capacity in which we serve is the related technical instruction provider.
So from a range from the trucking industry to cybersecurity, veterans can certainly fill the role, with these programs. So tell us then, Melanie, how as a service provider, as a college, if you will, in this community, I understand you connected with a tech association in your community, and how did that help you get in touch with veterans and companies? Can you talk a little bit about those partnerships?
Sure. So apprenticeship, I think, as everyone has noted on the panel today, has become a really wonderful pathway into the workforce, especially for transitioning military and veterans. So there has been a lot of interest in our tech community here in Northern Virginia about how to scale apprenticeship programs. So we're really excited because it's a purely industry-driven effort. So we are close partners with the Northern Virginia Technology Council, which is the largest regional trade association in the U.S. They have about 1,000 member companies from the tech sector, and we are working with them to scale apprenticeships both in cloud-related occupations, but also other information technology-related occupations, such as cybersecurity. A partnership with a trade association is key. Certainly as a college, we provide training and education opportunities, but we want to make sure that we're aligning supply and demand and being responsive to employer needs. So this has been a really great opportunity in partnership with NVTC.
Wow. So again, and I think probably one of the things I take away most from all of my work in apprenticeship for the last 5 years is partnerships matter, regional partnerships matter, having intermediaries matter, but really doing those partnerships on the ground help. So you've described, Melanie, you all are you're working with the Tech Association, you're working with Apprenti, who's also an intermediary. Any other connections or partnerships, or is that the circle of love, so to speak, for apprenticeship? Are there other people that you're working with?
So as part of the Northern Virginia Technology Council, there is a group that's called the Veterans Employment Initiative. So we have synced up with them to do outreach to the veteran community, and the Veterans Employment Initiative is a wonderful resource. They have worked very, very closely with our local and regional military organizations to ensure that there is a path forward for interested employers to make a connection with individuals who are interested in employment in the tech sector. So we are working with them to raise awareness of all of these opportunities and to make that connection very seamless in our region.
Great. So as you, we work with community colleges all over the country, as many of you do, and in fact, I'm at a convening of community colleges while we speak down here in Houston. So what advice do you have for, not just colleges, but other people, other folks who could be partners in this, whether it's community colleges or a local workforce board or employers? What sort of advice or lessons learned are there from your experience in Northern Virginia?
Sure. So there are two things that come to mind. The first that Dave and Marilyn both spoke to is that while it takes the village when it comes to apprenticeship, everyone who's in it is supportive and welcoming. So we're all here to make it happen at the end of the day. So if there are any questions, people are there to support you through the process. I also think one of the things that we've observed with apprenticeships so far is that industry-recognized credentials are great benchmarks and milestones to incorporate into apprenticeship programs as appropriate and as they fit, but they're really great indicators of how you're progressing through the apprenticeship program.
So as you've looked at this across your campus, are you going to stay in IT and cyber? Are there plans to go into any other industries with this model, or just sort of build out and continue the work in IT?
So given that we are diving into apprenticeship programs over the past year, we certainly are open to exploring other industry sectors, but it's really critical for us to focus on information technology. Our labor market research shows that we have an unemployment rate in IT that teeters between 1% and 2%. So it's really important that we get creative and innovative to make sure that our business partners have access to a talent pipeline.
Great. Super. So is there, before we wrap up here, Melanie, I don't know, was there another slide, or is that I think
that is it for me on the PowerPoint slides.
So any other parting words of advice, Melanie? Again, there's, huge community college efforts going on in California, in most states. Many states are becoming intermediaries and sponsors. The community college system are. So any just other parting words for that system, which is taking a larger role in apprenticeship train, at least as a related technical trainer?
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned, Eric, about the community college can play an important role when it comes to the implementation of apprenticeship programs. So definitely encourage business partners, community partners, and community college partners to explore the role that they might be able to serve in their respective communities.
Great. Thank you. Melanie, thank you so much. We're going to open it up for questions, so you'll have to chat them in, and Emma is anxiously awaiting them. We'll pass them on to us. But while we're waiting for some of those to come in, I just wanted to ask Dave, if I can go back to Dave at Fastport for a quick question. Dave, did you mention something, or did I hear something you're starting to explore some healthcare possibilities with apprenticeship?
Well, we have started to. We're working with both the healthcare intermediary and a large-scale employer for entry point into nursing and some other, and maybe even a transition from CNA into a nursing field. It really hasn't been done that way, so we're experimenting with right now, and we're working with the National Office of Apprenticeship as well on that. Okay.
Great. And Mark, while you've been listening in, has there been any other thoughts that have come to you that you wanted to comment on? Have you heard from Marilyn and Dave and Melanie?
Yeah, the only thing I would just say, there's a ton of resources out there, and if in doubt, I mean, some are. If there's a pay-to-play aspect to any veteran resource, I would be very careful about it. And again, if you go to veterans.gov and click on Hire Veterans, you'll see our employer guide. It's about 15 pages. It includes a whole bunch of links and different resources that can help you. And again, just give me a call, and like Dave said, I can help you navigate and get you connected with trusted points of contacts in the veteran employment space.
I think you just hit a very important point that I didn't think of, Mark, but I did want to sort of flag it, and that is pay to play. And so I guess there's some low road programs out there, or maybe possible scams out there, but to be an apprentice, you shouldn't have to be paying for, you shouldn't have to pay to get into these. Is that right? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, in the space I've heard, anywhere between like 40 or 60,000 of these organizations out there. So just, between Dave and myself, just do the due diligence, and you can contact us. But if there's a pay-to-play option out there anywhere, just proceed carefully and research it, because there's plenty of federal, state, and other local resources that can help you put together an apprenticeship program without an employer paying a dime. And that's the same way for connecting with veterans as well.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a few questions coming in. I'm going to answer one, and then I'm going to shoot a couple to you guys. One person is asking, is the only benefit to apprenticeship to corporations? And if we can go to Dave's second slide. Dave had a couple of slides on benefits to employers and benefits to apprentices. My years of workforce development, I would say apprenticeship is the most significant program that's had a benefit for both. So it is a benefit for employers, and it should be, because employers need to expand and grow and compete in a national economy and a global economy. And apprenticeship provides workers with an opportunity to get in at an entry-level position, work their way up, not have to go into debt with college, get on the job learning, and get their wages increased over time with their skills and competencies. And the beneficiary of that is the apprentice. But at the same time, the employer is getting a worker who is skilled, who has the competencies they need, who is well-trained, and is much more, I hate to say the word loyal because that's not what I'm trying to say, but it's much more likely to stay on the job over time. So there is a mutual benefit of this, and I can't say it helps one of the. I think the apprentice probably makes out more than the employer does, quite honestly, in the long run. But there are benefits to employers in terms of enhancing their workforce, and the next slide will say there's just plenty of benefits for the apprentice themselves. Let's see, Dave. So I got a question about the vet readiness that you spoke about. Are there organized programs that do that, or is that just something an organization has to get smart on, get educated, maybe talk to somebody like you to learn how to do that? What advice do you have for?
Yeah, it pretty much and that organization needs to drive the train on that, and talk to other organizations that have adopted those practices. And it's been restated several times here. When it comes to apprenticeship, and when it comes specifically to veteran transitioning, this community shares, and you can get best practices from people who've been there, done that. Mark is a great source. I'm a great source, and I will connect people with like entities that have already gone through those processes and talking through there. Marilyn made reference to mentor programs, things like that. Marilyn picked my brain actively when she was engaging in this military transition program, and I think they're following a mentor program pretty much like what I put in place when I was in the private sector. So the community will support you, but you need to get somebody who can help you network, and Mark made reference to that as well.
Good for Marilyn for know where to go and for picking your brain. And Marilyn, we got a question here that says, what should businesses expect in terms of a timeline in seeking to register a new apprenticeship that's tied with credentials? So what sort of timeline can an employer expect?
apprenticeship program is 12 months long. So they graduate from the apprenticeship program after they've been here for a month. And so the pre-apprenticeship training component will look different depending on what sector you're in. So for us, it's with the truck driving schools that we partner with and associations, they complete that training, which is their pre-apprenticeship training, which qualifies them for the next step, which is the employment and entering into our apprenticeship program, and then they're in that program for 12 months.
Right. And then how long, and I'll go to you first and maybe Dave second, how long did it take for you to get the program registered? Was that something that just...
No, it didn't take long at all. With again, using Fastport as our intermediary, we were able to adopt their national standard, and as long as we met those requirements, and we did, so it took a couple of weeks.
And I think when you work with an intermediary, that speeds it up, but,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it varies from state to state. There's state apprenticeship agencies, and then there's U.S. Department of Labor.
We've worked with both, and I would advise the Department of Labor. The state apprenticeship programs can be much more complicated.
Well, I would say maybe in that particular state, but I would tell you that I was talking to a program today that the state turned around a unique new registered apprenticeship program in 2 days, approving it. So it varies from state to state. It's a little uneven. The better relationship you have with your state apprenticeship agency, the easier that's going to be.
It may be easier now, too, with all the focus on apprenticeship.
Right. So there's a process, and it moves along quickly. Question about JFF's role in veterans apprenticeships. We don't directly run veterans apprenticeship programs, but our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning can be a resource for the field. So we'll have some articles and resources, and we can certainly provide some general advice. But part of what we do is have webinars like this because we can't be experts in all of these spaces, and I think you saw all that. But certainly if anybody wants to talk about veterans and apprenticeship and starting those programs, we can be helpful with that. Another question I'll put out, and Mark or Melanie, I'll put this to you. Melanie, you first, and I think you've already given us an interesting example, but, are there states or cities where a Chamber of Commerce is a leading intermediary in this space? And I know you talked about an industry association, a tech industry association. Melanie, is any chambers in your area involved in this work?
So we certainly work very closely with our chambers, not directly involved with the apprenticeship program as far as implementation is concerned, but certainly as we're thinking through business needs and collecting information about how we need to be responsive, they are a very important partner in having those conversations.
Right. And I know the national chamber, the United States Chamber of Commerce, is active in this. Dave, do you have any feedback or input on a chamber, or you too, Mark?
Well, yeah, I would just say that industry associations, workforce development boards, chambers of commerce, I have seen in different communities these different entities get involved because it really, at the local level, it creates a training pipeline that's not only good for veterans but for all job seekers as well, and for the local employers. So I have seen cases where all of those organizations have been involved in establishing an apprenticeship program.
Great. And I do know that there are chambers in South Carolina, I know for sure, in New York and California, that are actively involved in apprenticeship in some role. They may not be the intermediary. Sometimes they broker job placement. Sometimes they organize employers. There's probably a chamber out there that's apprenticeship intermediary. One doesn't come to my mind immediately, but it would not surprise me if there are. Mark, I have very specific questions about disabled DVOPs, disabled veteran. Sorry, now after working with them for years, I'm forgetting the acronym. But DVOPs and LVERs and the one-stop system, about their role in apprenticeships. And my notion is they should be able to know where to assess, connect, and refer somebody to, but is there necessarily a formal role for DVOPs or LVERs in apprenticeship?
The disabled veteran outreach program specialists provide kneecap to kneecap personalized employment services for veterans that are either disabled or they have other significant barriers to employment. And that local veteran employment representative or the leaver works from that career one-stop and conducts outreach to local employers to get them to use the services at that American Job Center. But at the local area between the Workforce Development Board and local career one-stops and American Job Centers, they are, especially the business service teams, they are very familiar with local apprenticeships that they're supporting in the area, because there's some workforce development funds or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds that could be available for employers at local communities.
Yeah, I've seen some great innovations in use of those funds, working with the DVOPs and LVERs. But sorry, I get my acronyms screwed up, Mark. So they should know where to refer people and connect them to, but they may not be them. They're not the ones, necessarily putting the apprenticeship programs together, but connecting.
No, they're not. They're there to provide, to try to get a DVOP is to get an employer job ready, or to get a veteran with significant barriers to employment or disabled veteran. They get them job ready, employment ready. The leaver tries to, their role is to get local employers to hire veterans.
Right.
So that's how that works. And again, that happens at the local level. Okay. But they don't necessarily get involved in the creation or management of apprenticeship programs, but they should be aware of local apprenticeship programs so that they can direct those veterans seeking services.
Okay. So we spoke a little bit earlier, Dave brought it up, I think, about having the right support for veterans in the workplace. And so a question came in about support services, and are there specific funding sources a program can leverage to provide these services? I'll take a short crack, but then I'm going to turn it, to most of the panel to answer that question. There's a couple of different types of support. There's support on the job that employers can provide, and then there's other support in the community to provide the apprentice themselves some support. Certainly the WIOA system provides some of that support. Funding sources, there may be organizations that do it. I'm unfamiliar with direct funding sources. I know that in some cities, a local foundation has funded a program to support apprentices. I haven't seen one in veteran space, but maybe there is. Melanie, are there any sort of external support services that you've seen yet in Northern Virginia, or how does that work? And then I'll go to Dave and Mark.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different support services. One of the support services that we tap into quite frequently when our apprentices are going through their related technical instruction on campus is actually through our internal military and veteran services team. They're really wonderful. They have a big grand scope of knowledge about all the resources that are available. So we really work hand in hand with them to make sure that any resources that are needed are available and found.
Okay. And then Mark and Dave, the question was, is there a specific funding source that if there's a community organization or some group who wants to provide support to veterans and apprenticeships, is any funding sources? I guess if you're part of a potential grant that's been out there, possibly. Mark, are you aware of any?
Well, I don't have any specific cases, but I certainly, and for any of the folks on here, I know who to get you connected with in each state. There's a state veteran coordinator, and there's some other points of contact that we can try to get that information. But I think it's really specific, and there's different programs, and a lot of them are at the local level. Okay. Dave may have more info than I do.
Great. Dave, anything to add, or you'll just go?
Yeah, funding is convoluted, as everybody who's ever touched this well knows. I'm participating in talent pipeline grants that were WIOA funded grants that were controlled by the state, because they were that 15% of the portion of WEO funds that the state gets. That was for a veteran transition that worked directly with community colleges. We partnered all of it through apprenticeship. I've done that in a single state. I've also done AIG grants that coupled with community colleges and private providers and employers that had a direct line from pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship and help fund the pre-apprenticeship training. In some cases, for veterans, especially those who didn't have GI Bill benefits for whatever reason. They're out there, but there's not one magic key that brings it to you. There's several funding sources that have hit and are available, but you got to take a look at them. Anymore, what you're looking at, like with the H-1B grants that are coming out, they're encouraging education providers, private sector providers, and intermediaries to work together in those processes.
All right.
So if you're a community college or you're one of those organizations, reach out to some of the intermediaries. There is some funding. There's also discretionary grants with most states. I would also have that conversation internally in the state in which you're operating, or states.
Great. All right. So before we wrap up, I just want to tell folks on the line who are participants today, please go to our website. You can go to jff.org. That's easy. Or go to Center for Apprenticeship, Center number 4 apprenticeship.jff.com. .org. Or just go to jff.org and click over to us. We have tons of resources on the site and materials, and please sign up for our newsletter as well, or quarterly updates that comes out. We'll try to keep you in the loop on things. I really want to thank Melanie Stover from Northern Virginia Community College, Marilyn Surber from Melton Trucking, Dave the Man Harrison from Fastport, really out in this world, rolling up his sleeves, doing this work every day, and mostly the service of my good friend Mark Toal over at the Department of Labor's Veterans Employment Training Service. I want to thank you all for participating. This has been recorded. It will be posted on our JFF Center website, I'm pretty sure next week. Panelists have just done a tremendous job today. I can't thank you enough. And we've had a couple of hundred people respond and be on this call today, so we know this is a hot issue across the country. So honor your veterans this weekend and the Marine Corps' anniversary. 224, is it, Mark?
No, it's 243rd, and we're the only service that was founded in a bar. It's Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, November 10th, 1775.
Everything you always wanted to know on a JFF Center for Apprenticeship.
That's right. You never know when that'll be a trivia question.
All right. Happy Apprenticeship Week next week.